Pray with me. Gracious God, on this Sunday devoted to love, and especially Mary's love for her child, we thank you that we are able to worship here. Now, Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Religion and politics in the United States of America are like a couple who have been married for many, many years but don't really like each other. Politics uses religion, and religion in turn tries to court political power. Religion and politics are among the oldest of couples. The church and state have long been the twin power structures in human society. Governments that can control the divine are invested with more power. Religions that can appoint kings can change the direction of history. Our founders set out to create a nation where the twin power structures were kept separate. They were fleeing from nations ruled by monarchs who were either appointed by or hemmed in by the church. They wanted a secular government and for individuals to be able to live out their faith in their own way. Okay, admittedly, this is a terrible few-sentence description of the interchange between religion and politics in America. And I'm sure the people who have written many books and articles and whatever would be as uncomfortable with my summary of history as I am when people decide to wax theological without checking their theology against anything but Facebook or the culture of the church they attend. Theology is vast and nuanced and slippery because when we speak of theology, we're speaking of God, and we cannot fully comprehend God. We dress God up in outfits that mirror our own. We ascribe to God the political and denominational beliefs that we hold. We call God Father and then create in our minds an image of a Father who looks, thinks, acts, and believes just like us. But the power of love is the power to open our eyes. The power of love is not found in rigid conformity to a set of beliefs, but in an expansive table with seats for everyone, even those people who think that the Raiders are the best football team. This story that we read today is one we usually save for after Christmas. It is, after all, set approximately 2 years before Christ's birth, or 2 years after Jesus' birth. The Magi would have had a bit of a delay after seeing that star in the sky. I'm sure they didn't have their plans made and their bags packed before they saw the star. I imagine it more as they were watching the sky and saw this new star, and then they have to appoint a committee to figure out what that star is all about. And then they have to have arguments about whether it's important enough for them to journey to see the baby, and I'm sure that at least one person in the group did not think it was a very good idea to travel to Herod's country. Everyone knew that Herod was a bit off. He ruled Israel with fear, an appointed king with limited actual power who was so frightened of losing what little power he had that he kept killing members of his own family to preserve it. Yeah, he was not a good guy, and he was not a good king. And here were these magi ready to travel many miles in a caravan without cell phones or GPS, just following a star because they believed there was something different about this baby. This baby who would grow up to be the king of the Jews. And I don't know why they were compelled to seek out the king of the Jews, because they were not Jewish. But there must have been something they knew about this child that led them to believe that he was worthy of worship. That's the good part of the story. That's the part where we see the power of love. love of God drove those magi to travel from the east to Bethlehem and seek out the very Son of God who was born a tender, fragile baby and given to parents, human parents, failure-prone parents, to be raised as a human. That's the good part. The bad part comes next. Herod, in his anger, calculates the age range of people who could be this new king. He calculates, and then he issues a decree so heinous to even consider it brings bile to the back of our throats, causes our hearts to break, and rends the veil of safety from our eyes. See, our faith is not a bubble of protection from the evil of the world. Our faith is the foundation on which we stand when the world begins to crumble around us. Our faith, our power is found in the sure and certain knowledge that Jesus Christ is indeed King, not only of the Jews, but of all the world. He is the King who has conquered sin and death and set us free from the chains of our iniquity. Our faith tells us that we are loved even when terrible things happen. Our faith assures us that God is present with us, weeping beside us, and urging us to action. Urging us to see the other person as just as important as we are. Urging us to notice the humanity of each person we encounter on the street or on the TV. I must admit to feeling like Scrooge some days. There he was in his office, working to collect his money, and these people who couldn't be bothered to work want his money. You can say a lot of negative stuff about Scrooge, but he had a work ethic. Work was important to him, and he worked a lot. I can see how when they came to ask him for a donation, he felt angry. Why should he care about those who can't be bothered to care for themselves? And those sick people who are taking up so many resources? Perhaps they should just go on and die. Rid the planet of their drain. And you and I, we looked shocked at such a statement. But if we were honest for a minute, we would remember that there are some people out there we are sure the world would be better off without. Scrooge woke up to find the ghost of Christmas present in his room. This is my favorite ghost of all. Charles Dickens' description of him is just impressive. He embodies the feeling of Christmas with laughter and power and merriment. And that ghost, as he shows Scrooge the celebration of Christmas, opens Scrooge's eyes as to how other people actually live. Scrooge saw happiness. Scrooge saw the love that Tiny Tim's family had for him, despite the boy's terrible illness. Scrooge saw that love was something much deeper than he had ever imagined. His heart began to break as he witnessed the great beauty of life commingled with the sorrow that was sure to come. That's the thing about life. Our lives are a tapestry of beauty and pain. There are days completely without sparkle. There's the moment-by-moment drudgery of washing, drying, folding, and putting away the laundry for the millionth time. There's the endless repetition of days. And there's Christmas. There are times when the world is filled with magic and laughter and friends and good things to eat. There are flowers blooming on the hillside, and there are perfect glasses of wine. There are moments so good You want to share them with the world. In moments so tragic, you can't even begin to process them. The question for us is, do we see the despair and close our hearts and minds? Or do we see the despair and find ways to love? Not love like the silly pop songs you hear on the radio, but the kind of love that opens a miser's eyes and causes him to reverse a lifetime of greed. The kind of love that breathes life into the dead places in our hearts, our homes, our towns, even our countries. Do we try to hold on to power over others, or do we let it go and wrap ourselves in the power of love? Once upon a time in America, the mainline denominations were the majority religion. We did not use our religious affiliations to try to gain political power. Then, the evangelical movement became the majority religion in the 1970s. To get elected now, one has to use the words and phrases of the evangelical movement because theirs is a faith lived out loud. The desire they have to bring others into their fold requires that they speak boldly about their faith. But that faith does not always include loving people as Jesus told us to love people. That faith places emphasis on the afterlife. And we know that life and life abundant is not found on a mansion on the other side as much as it is found right here. This life, this time, this is the time we have the power to share the power of love. The things we do here matter, and they matter much more than the words we say. If we see our neighbor without a coat, and we have two, well, we should give that other one to our neighbor. If we have food, we should share it. If we have hope, we must pass it on. If we have faith, we must hold one another in prayer. The power of love is found in giving it away. The power of love is not bound by our expectations or our requirements. The power of love was born in Bethlehem and worshipped by the Magi and crucified, died, and was buried. But the power of love is unstoppable. And after 3 days, love burst out of that grave and declared that the whole world, the whole universe, has been made new. And for that, we can say, thanks be to God. Amen.